Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're kind of pushing past the usual story, the one where DNA is the absolute king of life's blueprint.
Yeah, we're looking at something maybe more fundamental.
Exactly. We're diving into this idea of an underlying intelligence, something that organizes life, maybe even before the genes really get going.
It's this concept of knowing being.
Knowing being, right? What if that inherent drive, that urge towards life and structure, is actually in charge? And DNA, maybe it's like an essential tool, but not the ultimate boss.
That's the shift. Yeah, that's the core of what we've been digging into. There's some fascinating work across bioelectricity field theory. And when you pull these ideas together, you start to see how this knowing being, this sort of built-in capacity for organization, might actually be the primary driver.
So DNA and like the physical stuff, they're still crucial.
Oh, absolutely essential, no doubt. But maybe their role is more like being the instruments in an orchestra, while the bioelectric field is the conductor.
Okay, I like that analogy. So our mission today is to really unpack that hierarchy, how this knowing comes first, and how that kind of flips our whole understanding of, well, everything from how we develop to how we heal.
Exactly. And it starts with this idea you mentioned, finding.
Yeah.
This light field.
Yeah, tell us about that. It sounds pretty out there.
Well, it's less out there and more about a dynamic structure. Think of a constantly shifting, self-reinforcing field of, well, light or maybe potential information.
Okay.
It's not static. It's this complex, evolving pattern. And it's structural, provides the scaffolding, but it's also functional, like it actively directs things.
And it remembers.
That's the crucial part. It seems to hold a memory. It gets refined by every interaction over time.
So it's almost like the universe itself has this tendency to organize, and this field is how it happens in living things.
You could see it that way, yeah. Every little input, every experience subtly tweaks the pattern. It reinforces certain pathways, maybe weakens others. It's a constant feedback loop, always sort of pushing towards, well, greater coherence, maybe complexity.
Yeah. This definitely makes me rethink DNA. We've always been told, it's the instruction manual, the blueprint.
Right, the central command.
Yeah. So how does it fit into this field first picture then? Is it less command center, more, something else?
If you look at the bigger picture, that command center idea starts to feel a bit incomplete. A better analogy might be DNA is a massive library. Or maybe super detailed parts list.
There's parts lists.
Yeah, it tells you how to build the proteins, all the molecular bits and pieces. Essential, obviously. But it's not the architect sketching the grand design.
Okay.
And it's not the foreman on the construction site telling every cell exactly where to go and what to do next.
So if DNA is the parts list or the library, what's writing the design? What's actually giving the orders during construction?
That's where bioelectricity and these fields really come into focus. They seem to be the likely candidates for that primary guidance system.
The electrical signals.
The signals, yes, but also the shape of the fields they create, the geometry. That seems to direct the really basic stuff, when cells divide, where they move, how the whole organism takes shape.
And this isn't just theory, right? You mentioned Michael Levin's work. That provides actual evidence.
Oh, absolutely. Levin's research is, frankly, groundbreaking. It offers real experimental results that, directly challenge this idea of DNA being all-powerful.
Like what? What kind of experiments?
Well, for instance, they've shown that even if you significantly scramble the DNA sequence in, say, a developing tadpole.
Scramble the genes.
Yeah, mess them up quite a bit. But if the bioelectric gradients, the voltage differences across the tissues and the gap junctions, those little channels cells use to talk electrically, if those are maintained correctly, the organism can still develop pretty normally.
Wait, seriously. Jumbled genes, but normal development, if the electricity is right. That really shakes things up.
It does. It's a major challenge to the standard genetic view, and it gets wilder.
How so?
Levin's lab has actually managed to change fundamental body plans, like telling the organism where to put its head versus its tail.
Without changing the genes.
Without touching the DNA sequence. They did it just by manipulating the flow of ions, the charged particles that create those electrical signals.
Wow. So the electrical pattern can override the genetic instructions.
It certainly seems like it acts as a higher level control system, yeah. And maybe the most stunning example is limb regeneration.
Okay.
They've managed to trigger limb regrowth in animals that don't normally regenerate, like frogs. And they did it not by tweaking genes, but by sort of reawakening a dormant field memory.
Field memory, like the
Yeah.
pattern for the limb was still there electrically.
Exactly. It suggests the blueprint, the information for the form, isn't just in the DNA. It's held in this bioelectric field pattern.
This field memory idea is,
Yeah.
it's huge. So if DNA isn't the main storage, where does this biological wisdom, this knowing being, actually come from?
The sources suggest it resides in the field itself. More specifically, in what's described as the geometry of encoded experience.
Geometry of encoded experience. Okay, break that down.
Imagine like a living matrix of light or potential, and it holds information from, well, multiple layers, ancestral patterns passed down, your own personal history, your experiences, and constant real-time feedback from your environment right now.
So when we talk about instinct or innate knowledge, it's not just like hardwired genes.
That's the intriguing idea here. Maybe it's not some mystical force. Maybe instinct is actually tapping into these previously stabilized coherent field patterns.
Stabilized patterns.
Yeah, like well-established, efficient ways of operating that are already encoded in the field. The system can access them quickly, often faster than waiting for slower chemical processes to unfold. It's like loading a pre-existing software program.
Huh. This completely changes how we think about inheritance then. It's not just mom and dad's genes.
Exactly. It seems to be much more than just the DNA molecules. There's this concept of field resonance.
Field resonance.
It suggests there's this kind of holographic imprint, a basic informational pattern in the field that gets passed down. And DNA's job is partly to read that imprint and help manifest it into physical form.
So we inherit the pattern, the memory, the coherence, and the DNA helps build it.
That's the idea. You, the listener, aren't just your genes. You're like the light dancing in this mirrored tunnel of evolution, shaped by these resonant field patterns through time.
Okay, my head's spinning a bit. This connects to some really fundamental physics too, right? You mentioned the matter-antimatter asymmetry.
Yeah, it's a potential link. If you take this field-first view seriously, it might offer a new angle on why there's so much matter in the universe and so little antimatter. It's one of the big puzzles.
How does that work?
Well, what if matter isn't just stuff? What if it's actually a highly organized, stable pattern, a form of pattern coherence, within some kind of fundamental informational field that underlies everything?
So the field came first, and matter kind of crystallized out of it as a stable pattern.
That's the line of thinking. The very early universe could have been this incredibly dynamic sea of field energy, just fluctuating. And matter represents patterns that found a way to become stable and self-reinforcing within that field.
And antimatter.
Maybe it represents patterns that were less stable, less coherent, or couldn't maintain that resonance as effectively. An inverse symmetry that didn't stick as well.
So matter basically won because it formed a more stable structure in the field.
You could say there's a coherence bias in the universe. Stable, self-reinforcing feedback loops tend to get selected for, like ripples becoming waves. This leads to a kind of pattern memory being embedded in the field itself.
Okay.
Those first stable patterns became the seeds for what we now call matter.
So matter, in a way, remembers the universe's early preference for coherence.
It embodies it. It is that stable organization. And maybe antimatter just didn't lock into those stable geometries as readily.
And where does light fit into this primordial picture?
Crucially, light might not be something that just appeared later. Maybe it was the fundamental structuring principle within the field, the way information and coherence were encoded and shared. Its properties might have been what allowed matter patterns to become stable and endure, potentially explaining that bias we see.
Wow. Okay. So the imbalance isn't just particle numbers. It's about which patterns achieved lasting coherence in the primordial field, potentially guided by light and resonance. That's a big shift.
It is, but it's not just abstract cosmology. This framework, this bioelectric field geometry system, we can actually build a logical case for it, grounded in established biology.
Okay, let's hear it. Walk me through the logic.
All right, step one. All life we know is electrochemical, right? Ion channels, voltages across membranes, electrical signals flying around, nerve impulses, heartbeats. It's all electrical.
Right. Basic biology.
So conclusion one, living things are fundamentally interacting with and generating electrical fields. No escaping that.
Okay. Step two.
Step two, the shape of these fields matters a lot. We just talked about Levin's work, changing development, regeneration, body symmetry, just by altering bioelectric patterns without changing genes.
Yeah, the head-tail thing.
Exactly. So conclusion two, There's crucial information shaping life that exists outside the DNA sequence encoded in the geometry of these biological electrical fields.
The pattern is information.
Got it. Step 3. Fields can store and transmit information or memory. Think of a magnetic field holding data, or even just sound waves carrying structure through the air. There's growing evidence, especially in complex systems like the brain, that biological fields can hold non-local memory, influencing things across distances.
So not just point-to-point signals.
Right. The field itself can be a medium for memory. So conclusion 3. Biological fields have the capacity to carry information and memory that isn't tied to a specific molecule or synapse.
Okay, makes sense. What's 4?
Step 4. Coherence and health are linked. We can measure this stuff. Heart rate variability, EEG brainwave patterns, optimal states, high performance, healing states, they show up as synchronized, coherent electromagnetic activity.
And the opposite.
Incoherence, erratic patterns.
Yeah.
Those are consistently linked to stress, disease, dysfunction. So conclusion 4. Biological health seems to be fundamentally related to the electromagnetic coherence of the organism's biofield.
Right. And number 5, light.
Yes. Step 5. Light carries form, not just energy. Think about polarization, spin, frequency. These are structural properties. And our bodies use light internally, biophotons. These faint light emissions seem involved in cell communication, regulation.
And DNA itself interacts with light.
It does. It absorbs and emits specific frequencies. So conclusion 5. Light isn't just incidental. It's a primary way structure and information are communicated within living systems.
Okay, so putting all 5 points together.
You arrive at a picture where life equals geometry plus field plus signal. DNA provides the essential building blocks, the molecular toolkit, but the bioelectric field, with its specific geometry carrying information via electromagnetic signals like light, acts as the master architect, the conductor.
So we're fundamentally electromagnetic structures, tuned, remembering, adapting structures.
That's the synthesis, yeah. Our knowing being operates within and through this field.
This completely reframes things like healing and well-being then. If we understand this biofield framework, can we actually use it practically?
That's the really exciting part. Yes, it points towards practical applications for, well, healing, optimization, enhancing potential. We can outline a sort of biofield framework.
Okay.
Think of 5 steps. 1, map the field. 2, clear interference. 3, restore coherence. 4, imprint new structure. And 5, lock in with feedback.
All right, let's break this down. Mapping the field.
That's about assessment, finding out the current state. Where are the imbalances, the disruptions? You could use tech like HRV analysis, maybe measuring skin voltage, thermal imaging, EM scans, or even the trained intuition of practitioners who work with energy fields.
Seeing the energetic landscape.
Yeah.
Okay. Then clearing interference.
Yeah, basically removing the static, the noise that disrupts the field's natural harmony. That could be simple things like grounding walking barefoot on the earth, or getting negative ions, maybe from nature or a device. Movement, like exercise or practices that help lymphatic drainage, clear stagnation. Even emotional release work fits here, as stuck emotions can create incoherent field patterns.
Decluttering the energetic space, like you said.
Exactly. Step 3 is restore coherence. This is actively bringing the field back into a more ordered, harmonious state.
How do you do that?
Lots of ways. Red and near-infrared light therapy can boost cell energy and voltage. Sound therapy, using specific frequencies like 432 Hz or 528 Hz, or binaural beats, can entrain coherent brainwaves. Microcurrent therapy applies gentle electrical currents. Even just simple coherent breathing, like a 6-second inhale and 6-second exhale, powerfully regulates the body's electromagnetic rhythms. It's about feeding the system coherent signals.
Okay, so after clearing and restoring, you imprint new structure.
Yes. Once the field is clearer and more coherent, it's more receptive. Now you can consciously introduce the patterns you want. This involves things like focus visualization, using affirmations or belief reprogramming, basically creating new field memories of health and potential. Even consciously choosing your environment and the people you spend time with matters, because fields influence each other through resonance.
Entrainment, right. And the final step, locking it in.
Lock in with feedback. This is crucial to make the changes last. It means building daily routines that consistently support the desired coherent state. Using biofeedback tools, even simple ones like tracking your HRV, helps you become aware of your energetic state and learn to shift it. And consciously connecting with people who themselves maintain a high degree of coherence helps reinforce your own patterns. It's about making the new state the default.
You mentioned a simple morning routine people could try.
Absolutely. A quick morning field reset. It just takes a few minutes. First thing, if possible, get some natural sunlight in your eyes, even just for a moment. Spend a minute or two barefoot on the earth if you can, grass, soil, even concrete works to some degree.
Yeah.
Then do maybe a minute of slow, coherent breathing, aiming for that 6-second inhale, 6-second exhale. And while you're breathing, set a clear intention for your day, focusing on the state you want to embody, like, my field is clear, vibrant, and resilient.
Simple, but touches on several of those principles. Sunlight, grounding, breath, intention.
Exactly. Even small, consistent practices can start to positively tune your biofield.
It's really interesting how this ties back to that very old intuitive idea that all things have and come from their center. How does that connect?
It's quite profound, actually, that ancient intuition seems to resonate deeply with this field perspective. A center implies a point of origin, a core of organization, right, where patterns emerge from and relate back to. In this model, that center could be seen as the fundamental pattern of coherence that defines an individual, the core structure in the field that gives rise to their unique form and function. It's the heart of their knowing being.
So bringing this all home, what's the single biggest takeaway from this deep dive into the biofield, into this idea of knowing being having primacy?
I think the fundamental insight is that seeing life through this lens, understanding the biofield's intelligence, it really offers a revolutionary shift, a shift in how we see ourselves, our health, our potential. It suggests the main driver isn't just the genes we inherit. It's this dynamic, information-rich field that we're constantly interacting with, constantly shaping with our thoughts, feelings, environment, everything.
And the knowing being is the architect.
It seems that way.
Yep.
This inherent drive for life, for organization, it appears to be the primary architect. DNA is the indispensable molecular scribe, maybe. But the game, as we thought we knew it, it looks fundamentally different now.
Okay, so what final thought or question should we leave our listeners with today?
I'd invite everyone listening to just consider this. If our fundamental nature truly is rooted in these coherent field patterns, this knowing being, how does that change things for you? How might it shift your understanding of connection to others, to nature? How might it change how you approach healing or challenges, or even just your understanding of reality itself? It's worth exploring those questions, see where they take you.